right, so recently I picked up a film from my local library. They actually carry Criterion films. This was a film I never heard of, so I was instantly more interested. And this film is The Learning Tree by Gordon Parks. This film was written, directed, produced by Gordon Parks. It is also the first ever Hollywood production of a film that was directed by a black guy, and this also included having one of the largest for its time black crews. So this is a very, very important film in the history of film and just the history in racism in America. And I thought this film was absolutely amazing. So essentially, this film is an autobiographical tale from the director. Essentially, it is about a teenager who lives in I think 1920ish Kansas, who lives in a small rural farm town and has to deal with a few different problems. So the first conflict that he has is with one of almost his friends, but he's more or less just like a local bully, and he doesn't really have too many people to hang out with, I guess. So he's always hanging out with him, even though he's like constantly threatening him and constantly bullying him. They get into farmer's field where they find some apples, start eating the apples, start stealing the apples. The farmer catches them stealing the apples, pulled out a fucking whip, starts beating these boys, and that guy who is a bully character, his name in the film is Marcus, played by Alex Clark, fights back. He doesn't put up with the racist farmers just getting to beat guys who they're doing something wrong. They're stealing apples, but it's pretty. I don't know. Maybe in the 1920s, apples meant more, but I guess actually apples are pretty damn expensive these days. We obviously know that's quite the gross overreaction, and because of the time period, he's able to get away with these things. But Marcus decides to fight back. He grabs a whip, starts beating this farmer. This farmer gets quite injured from this. This essentially launches the town to really judge and really hate on these black teenagers. And Marcus comes from a really rough background. He never grew up with his mother. His dad is a very bad abusive alcoholic, and so you do feel for this character that even though he's a dick, but he's still obviously a troubled guy, and he ends up getting sent to prison. Later on in this film, there's also a scene where these different, I guess, hillbilly rednecks are throwing dice in the woods. It doesn't matter. There's a mixture of black and white guys who are playing this game of crabs. Eventually, cop comes into the woods, or sheriff, I guess we're in the country, maybe. Is it sheriff if it's in the country? I don't know. And Newt and his friends warn these guys, hey, sheriff's coming, get going. One of the guys ends up running. The sheriff sees him and just shoots him and kills him in cold blood. And so this is where you really see how difficult of a time this would be for the lead character of Newt, that this is a town that is essentially they're okay with them to a point, but they're still heavily exploiting them. They're still allowing racism to run rampant and discrimination to run rampant. Newt also is having a relationship with a local Canadian girl, so shout out to Canada. And they form this really cute kind of coupleship. In the opening of the film, there's actually a scene where there's a tornado that's happening. Everyone's running away. Newt ends up getting hit by a tree and is knocked down. She ends up saving him and putting him into essentially like an old shed. And there's almost a scene, and then there's a scene where he looks passed out, and she ends up taking off her clothes and start getting down to it. And it doesn't go to a sex scene, but to me it felt like, from what I thought, I was like, this implies a rape. Like, did this relationship start off with a rape and he was unconscious and had no idea that was happening? But the film doesn't really ever answer that. There's times where Marcus just said, no, we were just lying naked. And it just added, so that was kind of a really confused part where I was like, is this implying a rape? Like, did she just rape this guy after getting knocked out in a storm and stuff like that? So I was really kind of confused by that, but essentially they just start this kind of teenage high school relationship, going out to different places and going on dates and walking her after school and things like that. And one of his white friends ends up taking them into a diner, and that's where they're discriminated against by the waiter, who says, yeah, you can take your guys' drinks outside. We'll serve you, but we're not going to let you sit in this restaurant. And that was a very, very well done scene, and you can just really feel for them. And like, I'm a white guy. I'm a white guy that was born in the 21st century. Discrimination like that has never happened to me, or probably will never happen to me. And so it is, I think, a great film of really demonstrating how dehumanizing and terrible it is that this was the time that they were living in. He's played by Kyle Johnson, and he did an excellent job in this film. Really loved him. There wasn't a crazier performance here. I'm not going to pretend there was, but overall, he did a very well job of demonstrating this teenage young man going through struggles and issues of his time. He's also someone that aspires to get educated. He's someone that wants to go to college. He wants to do better for himself. And his teacher is like, no, those colleges are meant for white folk. They're not meant for you guys. You guys are too stupid. Stay in the field. Stay in the factories. That's what you're good at. That's where you excel. And he's like, fuck that bullshit. I wanna be educated. I want to learn. I want to be a man. And I think, to me, I really respect that. And it is so sad to see that people in this time were held back by assholes like that who were annoyed that their ridiculous and bigoted power was essentially losing and would eventually cease. And at this time, Newt is working for the local farmer. That was the local farmer that was beating the guys with a whip. Essentially, one of the punishments for this was that Newt would have to give up his weekends for free labor. The farmer loves to exploit his teenagers. What a fucking dick. And there's another farmhand that he has on the fields, and this guy is a drunk. He's an alcoholic. And he one day fires him after seeing him just being absolutely loaded in the fields and just saying, you're too drunk to even explain yourself right now. Get the hell out. And what this farmer does see is that his owner was putting away all this brandy away in his barn. And what's a broke alcoholic gonna do? He's gonna get his hooch, baby. And he plans up with Marcus's dad, who's also an alcoholic. Two birds of a feather. And they essentially devise a plan to get this brandy and somewhat take revenge on this farmer for being an asshole and firing him. And so Marcus is there. He's just eating a sandwich. He's eating his lunch. Goes up to the top of the barn. And then the robbery happens where Marcus's dad breaks in, starts to grab all the brandy. At the same time, the other alcoholic farmer is trying to distract the farmer, claiming that he owes him his wages and all this stuff. They start to exchange blows, where then Marcus's dad essentially kills the farmer and beats him to a pulp and goes off with his brandy. Well, Newt was there to witness the whole thing, but was absolutely petrified and had no idea what to do in that situation. When the cops show up, all they see is a beaten up drunken farmer 1 who basically looks like the culprit for this murder that happened. And so this film ends with a court drama, which I agree with John Waters. It's a very strong cliche in film. When you start to watch a lot of movies, you're shocked at how many movies end in a court scene. But it is true. For screenwriting, it is such a great place to create drama. It's a natural drama that we have in the world. It works like a soap opera. Everyone, even some of the most boring cases in court, can be some of the most interesting, compelling things. And so this kind of ends with a court drama where the farmer, who was basically wrongfully accused of murder, even though he just sped up the farmer, and Newt has essentially this vision of saying, all right, I'm gonna tell the truth. I'm gonna say who did it. And Marcus's dad is so shocked that his performance was absolutely amazing at this. Like, to me, just watching that scene, watching his reaction to when Newt finally takes a stand and testifies against him, I thought it was absolutely amazing acting. And what ends up happening is he steals a gun from the sheriff, runs into a side room where there's no exit, and he kills himself. And the judge addresses the courtroom, and I thought his speech was absolutely great, where he just said that you guys convicted just because when they found out it was a black guy who killed him, they're like, all right, you're hung, you're dead, you're guilty just on the fact that you're a black guy and you were at the scene of a murder. And so I thought that was a really powerful thing, where so many of these people, they're so self-righteous, they go to church, they believe all these things, and at the same time, they're completely bigoted and they're willing to not even give a black guy a fair day in court. And so I thought this film had a lot of great commentary, for the history of racism in America. And also, too, I didn't really focus much on Gordon Parks' direction, but it was excellent. I thought the cinematography in this film was absolutely excellent. Gordon Parks has a photography background, so it makes sense why he'd be so good at all these beautiful shots of a rural country Kansas side. I thought it looked excellent. There was some great scenery where they went to a carnival. And it just felt like a very, very well done, very impressively shot. He showed his A game, I thought, in this picture. So overall, I would really highly recommend this film, especially if you're interested in the history of film. This is a very important film that we have in it, obviously why it's on the Criterion Collection, but I also just highly recommend it. It is a really good, enjoyable film that teaches you a lot of good things, gives you a lot of things to learn about and think about. Overall, I'm going to give this film an 8.5 out of 10. I thought it was absolutely excellent. Recommend everyone go check it out. Thank you guys so much.